Welcome to the Coach Doctor podcast, a podcast where we discuss aspects of sports coaching from grassroots to grandstands. I'm your host, James Barkell, and on this podcast, we hear from academics who research coaching. We talk to coaches on the front line from development levels through to professional coaches, and we discuss other elements of successful sporting programs with experts and practitioners from a range of sports science fields, motivational psychology, strength and conditioning, and many other elements required for successful performance. If you'd like to know more about what we do at the Coach Doctor, you can visit our website, thecoachdoctor.com.au, and learn more about our services, or follow me on Instagram at thecoachdr or Twitter at James_Barkell for more regular information. In this episode, I speak with Dr. Dianne Huxley, who is the National Performance Pathways Lead at Athletics Australia. She has a career in coaching and coach development spanning for over 30 years and has experienced coaching from the grassroots to the Olympic level in track and field. Like many of my guests, Di has taken on additional learning despite the experience she already held. And we met at the University of Sydney, where she completed her Masters in Coaching and subsequently went on to complete a PhD. Her research has focused on elite, junior and senior development pathways. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Dianne Huxley. G'day, Di. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, James. Thank you. Yeah, welcome. I'm glad to be here, and it's a while since we've caught up, so it's great. Thank you.
It's been a while, and I have to call you Dr. Dianne Huxley these days.
Yeah, and you, Dr. James Barkell, so that's pretty good. That's pretty cool.
It is. Di, before we start, could you please give our listeners a bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do in the sporting landscape?
Wow, who I am, lots and lots of things, but in the sporting landscape, I've been involved in athletics for over 50 years, and the usual route that a lot of people do in sports: started as an athlete, moved into coaching, in the school environment, then through to high performance, I guess, and then into study in that area, which resulted in the role that I've got now with Athletics Australia. So, but apart from that, I'm lots of other things. I'm a mother, a recent grandmother again, of about a week ago in America, and a partner, and lots of other things, I guess. But yeah, mostly involved in athletics.
Oh, well, congratulations on a new grandchild.
A boy this time, so I've got one of each, which is good.
Oh, good to hear. So your current role at Athletics Australia is the National Performance Pathways Lead Coaching. Tell me about this role. What does a week look like for Di Huxley?
Well, if you'd asked me that question 2 years ago when I started, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. But now, after 2 years in the role, it's basically evolved out of a grant from the Pathways grant from the AIS to develop a high performance coach development strategy, or put it in place. And so that's what I started off doing. And there were certain targeted areas within the strategy to achieve what they wanted at the end, which is much better coaches at the higher end, because, as we know, high performance sports all about results, and funding is linked to that. So we put together a series of programs, and so on a day-to-day basis now, it's managing those programs and the coaches within them. So it can be anything from running a workshop like last week, which I did, 3-day workshop with women in high performance coaching. It can be away with teams. It can be doing individual coach development plans with the 30-odd coaches we have in the program. Those sorts of things, yeah. So there's a lot of admin around, making sure the programs work, and we're providing lots of coach development opportunities to the coaches within the programs.
So just to give our listeners some background, I met you way back in 2009, I'd say, completing Masters of Coach Education at Sydney Uni. Tell me a little bit about why you ended up doing that degree and what you got out of it.
Well, the reason I did the degree was because I was doing some casual lecturing in coach education at Australian College of Physical Education, and I also had a background as a personal trainer and a background at managing and working in lots of institutes of sport, etc. So I had a big skill set in that area. So they said, well, look, we'd like you to run a degree program in the fitness degree, not the coaching one. But they said, but you need to have a master's. So that was the reason behind it. I really enjoyed what I was doing there. So I took on the master's program, and that was really, really beneficial. It really stepped up my knowledge and my opportunity to network with people in like yourself in other sports, which, I hadn't done before. And in my role at ACPE, I was teaching students from all different sports, not from track and field, which is, what I'd been doing, coach education outside. So I really, it opened my mind up to, a wealth of information, knowledge, resource, people. So it was instrumental, I think, in the next step of my pathway as a coach and a coach educator.
Great. So following the Masters, you went into a PhD. What were you thinking? And was this on the radar before you started your Masters?
No, what was I thinking? It wasn't on the radar. My doctor, I got a bulging disc towards the end of doing the Masters, and he just said, you're absolutely crazy even to think about it. And I didn't think about it, but part of the Masters, and I don't know whether you did this part too, but I did a dissertation for two of the units, and it was I looked at training loads and injuries and training loads in young athletes, because probably like yourself, I'm out there coaching lots of talented young athletes, and I'm just seeing them injured all the time. And 30% or 70% of our world junior kids don't go on to senior teams. So I was really interested to know more, and out of that, which received really high results and interest, and Donna O'Connor, who lectured us or ran the program, the Masters program, she suggested, you should do a PhD, and we can get a scholarship and whatever. So off I went, totally unknown territory. But again, it was as difficult as it was. I think, I didn't ever realise that I had such a thirst for knowledge, and I love learning. And I don't know, you probably found the same thing. Once you start delving into one area, you just keep finding something else. You go somewhere else, and your whole knowledge just, balloons. And I found it really interesting, and again, challenging, but it was really worthwhile doing. And basically, it's the reason I got my role now with Athletics Australia.
Yeah,
a good part of the reason. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough slog, but I think when you get to that end goal, it's you sort of appreciate the time and effort that you've put in.
Yeah, and I think when you're in it, you don't realise, what an expert you're becoming in an area, and because you're just so entrenched in it. And it's not until you get out back working and you start putting into place or pulling, I remember that bit of research or whatever, and you start drawing on that, and that just expands your knowledge and your ability to help others.
Yeah, great. So can you give me a brief overview of your PhD research and what some of your findings were from the research?
So initially, because of the thesis I did in the Masters, I wanted to know more. Okay, so we know that, look, 16% of the kids, or 100 kids that I surveyed, 16% had retired because of injury by the time they were 17, which is, really, really a high percentage. And it showed that the kids who were training really hard, not volume-wise, but intensity-wise, were the ones that were getting injured, stress fractures or whatever. So I wanted to look into that more. So the idea was to initially was why is this happening? I knew anecdotally and from my experience that a lot of the coaching kids were being pushed, and for lots of reasons. But I soon realised that by talking to kids who'd been to World Juniors but then didn't step up, that was not an easy thing for them to talk about, because they hadn't really processed why they didn't transition. And they believed that they would be Olympians and go on because they were, on the world stage as under 20 athletes. So I felt that was the wrong way of going about it. So I thought, well, okay, what about all the athletes who have been successful? Let's see what their development was. So I went backwards and I looked at the development of our the athletes who've been to the Olympics and World Championships. So not a whole range of teams, but the sort of top benchmark events in track and field, and looked at their development from when they were kids all the way through to making their first World Championships or their Olympics, and that's what my whole project was about. So I looked at a quantitative survey of about 100 athletes, and they ranged from athletes who competed in 1956 right through to 2013. And looking at what sort of support, what sort of training they were doing, more the amounts of training, whether they're playing other sports, what sort of support they had from their families, coaching, how many coaches they had, what was their level of coaching, that type of thing. Then school, how did they get into it? those areas, general areas. So that I looked at that first, and then I dug deeper into some qualitative work where I interviewed athletes who actually had been to World Juniors and became Olympians. So they actually did make a successful transition from being elite junior to elite senior, and talk more about the same sort of things, particularly the coaching, the parental support services, sport service supports, those sorts of things. And then I looked at, I interviewed 12 of our most experienced coaches about their thoughts on development of the key sort of areas for successful development of young athletes through to elite athletes. So that's what I focused on.
And what were some of the findings there? What made those athletes who progressed different from the athletes who didn't progress, or those athletes who came on late and had no experience at elite, as juniors, top of the order? But what made them sort of come out later on?
Well, I actually didn't find anything too surprising. What it did was it confirmed my beliefs that early specialisation, really damaged a lot of kids, and that's what happened in my master's study. So what I found, it confirmed that the research supported totally, my results totally supported what was out there in the research, in that the kids were not specialising. Yes, they were good at athletics, and they naturally went into it because, like all kids, they do it in the school carnival. So they continue. So they continued as probably their key sport, but they were still playing football, netball, every other sport, swimming, whatever. The majority of them until they finished school, and they got less and less involved in other sports as they went from, say, the 12 to 15 years. They were doing more sports. From 15, 16 they started to concentrate more on their athletics, but they didn't necessarily specialise in the key event that they went to the Olympics in, or the World Champs. They did various, if they were a jumper, they might have been doing various jumps or other sprint, other events as well. But by the time they were 17, their event was pretty, for most of them, was the key event was identified, and they were focusing on that. But it also showed that while they might have the talent, the physical talent, and another reason why specialising too early doesn't work was that mentally they weren't, or emotionally they weren't ready. So, I had examples of athletes who would qualify for World Juniors when they were 16 or 17, and their coaches wanted them to train 5 days a week, and they were lucky if they could get there 2 or 3. That was mentally where they were. So that was it was good. That was good to confirm to coaches and other athletes and parents but you've got to be ready. They're emotionally and mentally ready as well to step up, and that's why some athletes don't, because they don't want to. They just choose other things. They don't want to make that commitment, whether they've got the talent or not. So that was good. And then on the coaching side, those athletes, coaches understood that. They didn't push them. They let them, and these particular athletes really, were really grateful to their coaches. And they said, look, we must have been such a pain to the coach, but the coach was patient, didn't push us, recognised our talent and that we needed to go these other ways, and nurtured them. So that was good to know that. And, look, parental support was really important. And as with the coaches, it needed to vary as they transition from a kid, in the sampling age group through to specialising through to the older age groups, that the parents need to understand when to let go. The parents need to know what their responsibilities and needs of their kids were at the different ages. So, and the coaches as well. So, if they worked in sync, that worked well. But most of them had, on average, 3 coaches. So it wasn't just staying with one coach throughout their career, that they recognised the need to move on. And that was something important, that if you didn't, if you sometimes they have a strong attachment to the coach. It's more like a parent relationship, and they don't want to move because they don't want to upset the coach, but it could hold them back. So these athletes knew when they needed to, and that was another reason. But, obviously they were all talented. So as you need to be pretty talented to make it to that level. But yeah, and, training loads were appropriate.
So I was going to ask you about one of your publications, but I think what you've just spoken about probably elaborates on that, around why early specialisation and those investment stages of training, and how some of those athletes that do go to the Olympics or the World Championships differ. And I think you've just answered that, so we might skip that one. I just mentioned, because where that was the majority of them, and I think it's important for people to coaches to understand, parents and kids. Look, I had one athlete in there who went on to be a world junior champion and represented Australia quite a lot of Olympics. At age 8, he watched the Moscow Olympics, or one of the Olympics, and it was a light bulb moment. And his family was involved in little athletics, and he was doing little athletics too, and he loved it. And he wanted to train. He wanted to do more, and his parents, his dad drove him way, hours away to go to training, and he didn't want to play games and do little athletic playing games. He wanted to do serious training, sprint training. So, you've got to listen to the athlete too, and make sure that if that's what they want to do, then provide the right support around how you can nurture that desire and that dream, because it's important too. I think that correlates very closely with what I interviewed Professor Jean Cote a few months ago, and he was of exactly the same opinion in terms of if a young person that's 8 or 9 years old is ready and mature enough to take some of that stuff on, and they want to do it, then go ahead and support them. But if we as parents or as coaches are pushing young people to do more because they show a bit of talent and they're not ready and they're sort of resisting against it, then that's where it can be a problem. And I think the majority of young people are probably not mature enough to sort of go straight, know that that's something that they want to do and go and chase those goals from the age of 8. So it's really important that we do identify that. Have you been able to apply any of your findings or any of this research into your current role with Athletics Australia?
Yeah, probably. Probably prior to the actual role, Athletics Australia wanted to produce a guideline for junior training, and so I actually did that for them, and it's published on their website, and they're using that. They've adapted it to various programs and and it's, into the coach education area as well. So that definitely, my research definitely helped me be able to do that and for it to be, used successfully now. So that was, I don't know whether that came before my role, but I think the coach development role, I think it was just, my background in the sport and, a lot of experience as a team manager and team coach, working as a coach at various institutes, and plus put together the research and the hands-on coaching. So those whole three things enabled me to sort of move into the role of developing the coaches now, the high-performance coaches, yeah. So when I talk about the high-performance coaches, they're the developing high-performance coaches. So they're working with emerging and developing athletes. So athletes who've gone to World Juniors or have made a team, but they're not, they're not podium ready or podium potential athletes as yet. So it's upskilling those coaches to be able to move them up the pathway. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be hard for a coach who's been, I guess, brought up in a certain environment, they've been coached a certain way, to believe that, a soul or a specialisation is really, really important from a young age. Do you find that there's any resistance at all from coaches in terms of, no, we think it's really important that we specialise from a young age, or are most coaches pretty open to, I guess, develop their philosophies?
Yeah, I think, look, it varies. It varies. Obviously, the younger generation of coaches are educated in a different way, much more aware of the need to diversify and to allow kids to play other sports. So I think it just varies. And, look, I still see people out there with kids, running 20 laps around and around and, with young children, inappropriate sort of things for developing a potential distance runner, but you can't tell really when they're 11 or 12, 10 or 11. But I don't think there's resistance as such. I think the coaches that are getting successes with athletes have been, obviously doing the right thing and developing their athletes, because, they are coming through. And I don't really, I think when I first started my research, some of the coaches were saying that, little athletics was really damaging and we were losing a lot of kids because of that, because of the specialisation in that. But I changed my view on that, because having talked to so many athletes, they had really positive experience at little athletics, and it was just another one of their sports. So they weren't doing little athletics full time. And yes, some coaches were doing way too much, but on the whole, the athletes who were successful and went to the Olympics, at least pretty close to 50% of them had done little athletics. So it changed my view a little bit. So I think you hear a lot about the ones that do it maybe in other sports, where the kids are training way too hard, whereas I think in athletics, it's not necessarily the case anymore.
And what about hands-on coaching? Do you still do any coaching of athletes today, or is it more around the education?
Well, up until pretty recently, probably up until the last year, so the first year of the role that I had a bit more time. So I linked up again with my original coach mentor, John Quinn. So which is the reason I got into coaching. I was at a school teaching science, and of course they said, you got to be the athletics and cross country coach. And I said, well, I might be a good athlete or whatever myself and a good teacher, but it doesn't mean I'm a good coach. I don't know anything about it. So I went and did my level 1, and John was taking it, and it really, again, this thirst for knowledge and learning started me out. And so he recognised what I was doing with my group at school was, he said he thought it was a bit different to some of the other coaches there. So I actually ended up getting a scholarship through the TIS, and it was linked to the AIS. And so I had John Quinn and I had Dick Telford as mentors. So that really sort of fast tracked, I suppose, in a way, my development as a coach. And eventually I took on the role as a head coach at the TIS before moving to New South Wales to be the distance coach, and then finishing up a bit with Dick again in the AIS. So John and I have just gone, connected often backwards and forwards and over various years. So up until last year, I was basically co-coaching or supporting, assistant coaching to him and his big group in Sydney. So, but my job just got too busy, and I just couldn't, I couldn't make the commitment. But I would like to get back to hands-on coaching, and I will plan to do that when I retire. Well, I don't know when that's going to be. Initially, this job that this contract with Athletics Australia was for 2 years. It was supposed to finish now, but then they said, oh no, we want to extend it for another 2 years. So, because they're pretty happy with the programs we've got in place and the success, that we're having. So, I don't know when I'm retiring.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Some good feedback, at least. You're doing a good job.
Yeah. We've set up we just set up our 4th program. So, mentoring program, athlete to coach transition, and now we've got some more funding through the AIS to work with develop women in high performance coaching, because, as you know, across all sports, that's a key focus. And I've been part of a women in high performance project with the AIS, so that sort of again spearheaded me, or really, okay, we've got to get this happening, and Athletics Australia are really supportive and behind it. So that's been really exciting, and we had 12 new women last week in Melbourne, very engaged, very motivated, and very appreciative of the opportunity to develop and in this high performance space. So so it's been pretty rewarding.
Okay. That's fantastic. Now, you've also got a pretty good what's the word, high caliber coaching resume or CV. Can you tell me about some of the coaching roles you've had in the past? You've worked initially from that grassroots at the school level, then into state institutes, and then all the way to Olympic level athletes. Can you give us a little bit of a background into all of those roles?
Well, I guess on the personal coaching front, so if I talk about that, so I had some good athletes in Tasmania, and one in particular, Donna McFarlane, or Donna Tybert. I coached her from age 11 to 21 and developed her into steeplechase. She started to make her first Australian teams, but then she retired and got married and had children, and I moved to Sydney then. But when she came back to running, she linked up with one of the coaches there in Tassie that we worked a lot with, and she went on to Com Games, a bronze medal in the steeplechase in 2006, and world champs. She ran world champs and Olympics. So that was that's where I learnt about development. I developed her to be able to do that, so that gave me a lot of confidence. I also coached Roy Daniel to a bronze medal in the Paralympics in 2000. I can't remember the exact. He's a visually impaired athlete, the least visually impaired, so he doesn't need a guide. So he got a bronze medal in that. Also coached a couple of athletes to world cross-country teams, and I also had a stint of coaching some Kenyan athletes and spent a bit of time over there, and coached a guy called Ruben Kosgei who won the Olympic steeplechase 2000. And then we just bumped into him somewhere in Europe, and he'd been injured for 4 years with Achilles, and through my program and our work together with him and the physios we brought in here, he got back running. And obviously he's highly talented, so I can't say that he was already an Olympic champion, but under my program and for 3 or 4 years he did get back to a bronze medal. Obviously, first he was a third Kenyan, so they always are 1, 2, and 3 in the steeple. So that's sort of the key people that. Then I've coached a lot of juniors who have won national titles and whatever, and gone to uni in America like a lot of them do. And I also, one of the athletes that I coach, she went to modern pentathlon Olympics this year. I was her running coach for a long time, and then she moved in. So again, I know that I do a good job at developing athletes and what's needed to develop them. So that's aside, but in my roles at the various institutes, it was again around helping develop the coaches within the programs. And so in Tasmania, I was only there for 2 years, and in that 2 years, I think we got 4 athletes to the World Juniors. And so just by working with their coaches, and then I was moved to New South Wales to help set up a distance running program around the country, and they brought in Saeed Awida, who was a world record holder, Moroccan distance runner, as the national coach. And then I was brought in as a distance coach in New South Wales to work with him, because he didn't know the coaches in Australia, and that was a bit of a disastrous actual time for me. And that was a really difficult period of time, and one of the reasons that I decided to move out of the sport for a bit, or out of doing those roles, and why I went down to the RAS and to work with Dick to finish up. But those roles were really important. In that period of time, I was a team coach and team manager in about 12 teams. So world cross country, I was at 2 world cross countries as a team manager for the Commonwealth Games 2002, World Champs 2003, and 2004 Olympics, and had a big hiatus then. And this year in 2022, I was the lead coach for the World Junior team in Colombia. So interesting to come back in and be doing that role. And my role there was obviously looking after the coaches, but we had quite a few new coaches who were in our high performance program. So I was there, guiding them and just being there to support them in their roles. So that's sort of what I've done in that coaching side, coach management type roles.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's very thorough CV there. So congratulations. So how do things differ on the pathway from junior to elite athletes? If you're a coach and you're working with junior athletes, and you've I guess got aspirations to work at the elite level or senior athletes, as a coach, when you move up to that level, what are some of the differences that you might notice, or some of the different ways you might have to change your coaching?
Well, one of the things is that suddenly you'll be working as part of a team. So with a junior athlete, you're often in charge of everything, and then when you get to the elite level, then and their athletes are part of a NIN, then the institute system, then there's requirements based on the funding for the athletes to be working with the strength and conditioning coach, dietitian, and whatever. And so coaches have got to learn how to work in that team. And one of the difficult things is that the coach still needs to drive the program, and that's not always the case. And it's a frustration for coaches having, being able to work like that, because they're not actually part of the system. They're not an employed coach. They're still outside the system. So that's really difficult. I think the biggest thing too is that the time commitment that's required, and our coaches are we've got very few employed coaches. So the coaches working with, we've got 90 athletes about 90 athletes or coaches with 90 athletes with different coaches in the system. Now, most of them, there's probably only 10 employed coaches or 15 with the para coaches. So they're coaches doing other jobs. They're full-time work, or then they've got families. So that's really, really hard, because the athletes need the extra time. They might need to train at a different time in the day. And rather than at 5 o'clock with the rest of everyone else on the track, they can have access to the track at 10 o'clock, and the coach may not be able to be there because they've got to work. So I think and then being able to understand the high performance environment and the psychology around that, with their athletes participating in that domain. And if they haven't been in that themselves and haven't experienced it, that's difficult as well. So there's a huge amount of learning to do, and that's what our program is doing. So I think we had about 30 coaches in our program last year, and at least 20 of them went away with teams. So having that experience where they're actually in that environment, that helps the learning. But it's they're often very well qualified. They're level 3 coaches or higher than that, and so it's not their knowledge; it's the practical experience that in the environment, in the high performance environment, competition environment. And the other thing too is there's so much information and so many resources, and people are just bombarded with things. So trying to work out what's the most important is difficult. Whereas when you're with the junior level, the kids are still at school. It's not quite as full on. So it is a big step up. It's the same as junior football going into senior. Anything junior to senior is just a lot more time commitment.
Yeah, definitely.
And money. It costs a lot of money to travel around with your athletes.
So in terms of those things, like the money, when you're coaching at an elite level, or even on the junior pathway going up towards elite, there is a lot of travel. Like a track and field, you'll have you'll have your regional championships, and then your state championships, and then you'll have your national championships. So I'd imagine there is a lot of travel involved in that. Is any of that travel, assisted with Athletics Australia or AIS, or for those coaches who aren't already employed? Is it just they pay their own way?
It depends on the level of the athlete. So for the majority of coaches, no, they've got to pay. They'll be paying for themselves and all that. Sometimes, if they charge, and not all coaches charge, but they are charging a fee. Most, more and more now. That can cover travel and whatever. And as far as the athletes go, this is one of the things that the support from their parents, the tangible support, the financial support was really important, because they wouldn't have been able to get to the competition. So, but Athletics Australia, it does a good job with the athletes who are, in the teams, and some of them will have coaches who work in the system, so they're funded. But as I said, majority of them don't. But depending on the level, where they're ranked in the world or whatever, Athletics Australia supports the coaches to be there as personal coaches, and they'll get an accreditation to come to the training track and whatever. So it is as good as it can be, but with limited funding, and they prioritise the athletes and the coaches that can travel.
You mentioned earlier on that sometimes coaching at that level can have a large toll on your mental health or your mental capacity, and sometimes you need to sort of step away for a while. What's a way that maybe you or other coaches might be able to sort of refill their tank away from sport? Are there any things that you found that worked for you?
Yeah, making sure that you stay fit yourself. That's really important. And having, like everyone else, having a balance of life, and making sure that you make time for your family and those sorts of things. But I think, the awareness is there now too. We've had a lot on athlete wellbeing, and now we're starting to get coach wellbeing resources, and the RAS have just opened up, they've started their coach wellbeing toolkit. We're doing our own within Athletics Australia, and we actually piloted or will pilot the program that they've developed with the women that we've got in this new program. So I think it's interesting because the younger coaches, they know better how to look after themselves. And, look, obviously there's a lot more men at the higher level in coaching than there are in women. And a lot of our men in those roles are young, got young families, and they're learning to, and the sport is really, AA is really good about that, understanding that they need the balance. So I think that problem will alleviate. I think it's the older generation where we didn't have that understanding, or a lot of coaches didn't have that understanding. But, there's lots of ways, and we know there are lots of ways that you can, can wind down and make sure that you don't take phone calls at certain times, and, make it clear to people where your boundaries are. But one of the things that I found over the years is really interesting, because I like to exercise quite a lot myself. And what I've found, one thing that works really well is if I'm away with a team or a camp or something, don't do too much exercise myself. Just, be fit before I go there, and just walk, because you do a lot of walking. I think sometimes you can overdo it. And as I've got older, that's definitely something that I've realised, no, I can't be getting up and going for a run in the morning and then, walking 30,000 steps up and down everywhere. So I think you've got to listen to your body, just the same as you teach your athletes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great answer. In terms of mentoring, you mentioned before that you had 2 great mentors. Is that something that you promote as part of your coach development, finding mentors and learning off mentors?
Yeah, we've actually got a formal mentoring program where we pay the mentors. We've got the initial programs just about to finish. It's been 12 months. We had Ben Delta, who's a consulting firm that works with the AIS. They've helped us set up the program. And we knew what we wanted, and they've helped us structure it. And each of the mentors have 2 or 3 mentee coaches, and one of the incredibly successful ones has been with Dick Telford, who's a long-term distance coach, and his 2 mentees, and they have a weekly meeting every Friday with a set schedule and a set sort of topics they want to talk about. And the coaches, there's a short video of the AIS did a short video of them talking about it. It really, articulated very, very well the benefits to both the mentor and the mentee. So that's been really successful. In fact, the RIS have they're now doing their own pilot program based on what we've been doing and using the same consulting firm. So that's been a great success. And look, it's in the literature, and it's out there from out of the coaches' mouths. That's the key thing that they want to do. They want to be mentored. And so, we pay for them to go to be in the daily training environment, for the mentor to be with the mentee coach. And look, they discuss all sorts of things, and they're not necessarily from the same event group. It's all about high performance mindset and whatever. Some of them talk about, how do I balance my job as a teacher with my coaching role, and the mentor that they have has done that all their life. And so, getting those sorts of bits of advice have been really good. So we that's one of our key programs, and we've got 3 more mentors this year, so we've got 13 and for next year, and so we'll be able to link up a few more coaches. So definitely. And for me, you know, as I said, it's a reason that I progressed, because I had these key people supporting me and helping me develop.
In terms of research, you finished your PhD, what was it, 5 years ago now?
218, yeah, 218. So yeah, nearly 4.5 years, yeah.
Are you interested in going back and doing any other research again, or is that something
I think about it, but you know, maybe in my retirement, yeah, because I just wouldn't have time to do it. I'd love to be able to do some writing up or some studies, in-depth studies on what we've been doing in our program in AA. So I'm hoping that maybe that's probably what I'll do once we're finished, you know, a couple of years, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right, final question. We're in a pretty, I'd say, good space for athletics and a lot of Olympic sports in Australia at the moment, because in 10 years' time, we've got the Olympic Games in Brisbane. What are some goals, personal goals, I guess, for you heading towards 2032? And also, I guess, larger goals for Athletics Australia?
For me personally, you know, I won't be working this role in 2032, but if I can help the coaches who are working with our key athletes, or you know, who will be there, and new ones that are to come up, if I can help them be better coaches, then that's fantastic. That's what I really want to do. If I can get more women coaching at that level, that's another goal. But you know, as I said, we've started up with this program because in the women, in the key women in Athletics Australia, we've got 4 or 5 of them who are in their 60s. We've got a terrific young group coming through, and they're all having their babies now. And so we've got to nurture them and let them, you know, spend their time with their family, but stay connected to coaching and their athletes. And then we've got this group in the middle that largely who are coaching now. They've coached an athlete who's been to World Juniors, or you know, they've been to a Commonwealth Games even, or close to those sorts of teams. They're in their 40s and their 50s. Their kids are grown up. They're coaching, they're passionate, they want to progress along the high performance pathway. So, you know, I really want to get some of those women to, they're our succession plan, because the older coaches, again, they're not going to be there in 2032, or some of them maybe, but we've got to set that up. So they're the goals for me. I don't have any personal aspirations I don't think I'm going to be a team coach in 2032, so, or a team manager. I'll be way past that. So I just want to see the sport grow, and it really is in a good place. You know, I've come back into the sport after 15 years out of it, and you know, there's some fantastic people working. There's some great initiatives and you know, really passionate people working in there and supporting the athletes and the coaches. So I think as you said, we're in a good place, and you know, we're pretty sure there'll be funding to keep these programs going and working towards getting a big result in Brisbane. And look, one of the areas that we're focusing on too is we've just got a big new throw centre opened in Queensland, in Brisbane. And that's pretty exciting. And we've got one of our scholarship coaches is working there with Mike Barber, who's, you know, our key throws coach up there, along with Ben Thompson, who's also a top coach. So we've got 2 well-established coaches, and we've got a scholarship coach who's terrific. And then we've just named an athlete to coach person who's also in throws in that area, so that we've set up a really, really good group of coaches that can develop athletes and also talent ID athletes as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening. It's pretty busy and exciting.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time for sport, and especially after the Com Games, I think, where you had some absolutely brilliant results across a range of different events. It wasn't just one area, it wasn't just track, or it wasn't
Yeah.
just field. It was across a lot of different events. So obviously some things are going well at Athletics Australia at the moment for those athletes to be performing so well.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's a good place to be, that's for sure. I'm really enjoying my work and really appreciative of having the opportunity to put my experience out there and help other people, which is, always been what I've wanted to do. So it's nice to be able to, pull it all together and apply it. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Dr. Dianne Huxley, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got other things on this afternoon, so I won't keep you any longer, but really appreciate you spending some time with me and talking about what you do, your programming, some of your research, and also some of your coaching experience. Really appreciate it.
No problem. It's a pleasure, James, and nice to catch up.
Some of the key points that arose for me from this conversation was that firstly, as coaches of younger athletes, we need to allow them to continue sampling other sports. And if in team sports, let them try different positions on the field, and in individual sports, let them try multiple event types. In their own time, they'll start to specialise when emotionally and mentally ready. But let them make this choice rather than forcing them, as that generally leads to poorer long-term outcomes. Secondly, as a coach, be aware of your own well-being. Make time for yourself and do things that promote your own health. During event periods, make sure you find some downtime for yourself, as this can be a mentally draining period and an intense roller coaster of emotions for both the coaches and the athletes that they look after. Finally, a lot of coaches discuss the importance of mentors, and Di discusses the role of mentors within Athletics Australia. She highlights the point that coach mentors don't just need to be able to advise on sport-specific information, but can also assist with strategies to balance work and training loads, and other aspects of coaching that do not sit specifically within the technical and tactical realms of the role. I hope you've learned something from this conversation with Di, who is a very experienced coach and coach developer. Thank you for listening, and please like and leave a review for the episode and pass it on to your friends and colleagues in the coaching industry. And as usual, until the next time, keep up that learning.